What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Kristian of Ginevra. Thank you so much for being here today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, of course, man. Of course. It's awesome to have you here. We got the debut album, We Belong to the Stars, coming out September 16th of this year. Being that this is the debut album, what was sort of like the idea going into the making of this? Was there a specific goal that you and the other members are trying to achieve, or was there like a lot of experimentation and sort of like rolling the dice with the making of this album?
There were a lot of experimentation. We did like 10 to 15 songs before we ended up with the right direction. But once we found that it it went on. But we tried different directions, and the most important thing was that it couldn't be too similar to my other band, Seventh Crystal. Then so it was really hard for to find another direction. But I think we found it. We wanted it heavier, and everything gets heavier with the amazing Magnus Carlson on the heavy guitar riff.
I've always said Magnus Carlson is like the Rick Rubin of symphonic metal at this point. That
Yeah,
last that metal opera album that he did last year was one of the best like compilation albums I've ever heard in the genre.
yeah. He's uh, he's a monster.
Yep. And you led me perfectly into the next question actually because you obviously didn't want this to sound like Seventh Crystal and were you all trying to distance yourselves from projects such as Eclipse and Primal Fear and all of these other projects and we're all stepping into new territory you've never done before?
No, both yes and no, because we did both. Uh, I mean, it's in the frame of rock, but I mean, if you compare it to Heat and Nordic Union, the Ferryman, the Magnus Carlson, the rock, the symphonic rock, and Eclipse and that like that, and you can still hear that it's based on pure rock, but I guess what stands out the most is that I I love my pop melodies, and I tend to use that as a strength while I write music and top lines, and then at least I try to be as dynamic as I can and don't go for the highest note and the hardest all the time.
Hmm.
So I guess that is one thing that stands out a bit from the other bands, but yeah.
Being that this for people who haven't heard the album in full yet with the first three singles that we heard, Apologize, Unbreakable, and Sirens Calling, is that a good
Yeah.
representation of what all of We Belong to the Stars will sound like, or is there a lot more to be discovered for the listeners?
It's a bit more to be discovered, but basically that is what we're aiming for. And those three songs, I would say that they represents what we are in Ginevra.
Hmm. Do you feel like that you personally are expressing yourself in a different manner than like what people heard on Seventh Crystal, or being that it is still coming from your voice and still coming from you, that there is maybe like a similar identity that you're portraying in Ginevra as you do with Seventh Crystal?
Of course, it's the same. Um, since it's me singing on both of them, it's there is always going to be a red thread because otherwise I had to sing it completely different. But what we did here was that I kind of put in the extra gear and made it a bit more aggressive singing, maybe not as fine as Seventh Crystal, and no,
Yeah, you're gonna be going death metal before you know it.
of course I have some scream. I have some scream notes in some of the song. I love doing that as well, but that is not my main style.
And working with such a working with Magnus and Jimmy J and the other Magnus, do you feel
Yeah,
that like you clear all learn from each other? Do you think that the making of this album maybe opened up some new ideas of what you would bring to your other projects as well?
of course. Always working with other musicians and you get influences from other people. That is always good because just sitting in a room by yourself writing music, then you're not going to evolve. You need to meet other people. You need to listen to what they have to say, and you need to adapt that one, because so far everyone that I wrote with, collabed with, made background singings. So far, um, I've learned from every one of them, and you kind of adapt, and it's a really big influence to work with other people, and those are great musicians. I mean, um, Heat, Eclipse, Nordic Union, Free Fall. It's just that is top of the line material.
Yeah, it's you have a very impressive resume. Calling this a super group would be an
Yeah.
understatement.
Thank you, thank
Yeah.
you.
Being a vocalist, have you always, and this could apply to both Ginevra and Seventh Crystal, but have you always needed to hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or has a lyrical idea ever influenced the music itself?
It depends on which state of mind you're in. Usually, when you go into a production, you um, um, I have a hard time writing several different music types within the rock genre at the same time, because for example, when I worked with James Christian in House of Lords, then I just needed to adapt to the House of Lords team, and when we worked with Giant, I had to adapt to that. So you kind of need to adapt, and if you get the right feelings, the lyric usually um, comes really easy. But what is really hard is, like, when I write music for myself, then it's one thing, because I can show the people what I'm singing through the words. It's hard to write lyrics for someone else, and that person does not understand the full meaning of they can understand the lyrics and the meaning of it, but the full meaning of writing a lyrics, it's really hard. It's really hard. Sometimes it goes fast, and sometimes you need to scream
Yeah.
shit sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I like that term you said, the mindset, because like a lot of artists, like people could hear in a voice if this is a sad song or an angry song or a victorious song and stuff. And you mentioned that it depends on the mindset you're in. Do, do you feel that like every song you make is a reflection of an emotion that you were personally feeling, or is there a lot of looking outward for the lyrical and voice process as well?
That is actually a good question. When I write for myself and write lyrics for the projects that I'm supposed to sing on, I usually tend to write based on the mood or the feeling that, or the state of mind that I'm in that particular moment. But when writing for other artists, I'm partly I listen to their older music, and I kind of translate their lyrics into what they were feeling when they were writing it. So when I write to other people, I tend to look outside the frames, but when it's for me, I usually go on feeling and the mood that I'm in.
Mhm. And it's funny you mentioned that too, because like I feel like when you're in the vocal booth recording, there has to be like an essence of focus, and you have to be sort of level-headed. But so like,
Yeah.
but you also want to reflect that emotion. Is it sometimes hard to like write? They say that making music about your emotions is very cathartic, but if you are in a very emotional state of mind, does that almost make it kind of difficult, almost like distracting when it comes to actually like recording the vocals?
No, no, I tend to use that as a strength to kind of get it out of my body. But I have here at home. I have my studio on the second floor at home, so I have a 600 kilo vocal booth here in the back, so I can. If it is a day that I don't feel for singing, I just turn off the computer and walk away. It's not that I need to book a studio or a technician to record the vocals. I have all of my gear out here is connected to the vocal booth, so I just bring the wireless mouse into that, and I can run the whole computer in from inside the vocal booth, and it's just completely quiet outside.
Yeah, you lucked out with that. If I like had a studio booked and I wasn't feeling that emotion, I would have to like look for trouble just so I could go to the studio and record just to get my money's worth that day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. In order to like get that inspiration, that drive, do you almost like you have your own studio in your house, which is cool. Do you almost need to be in a certain place in order to cultivate ideas, or do ideas just come out of the blue for you?
Usually it comes out of the blue, but as I said before, talking to other musicians, working with other people, and I mean, when I was talking to James Christian in House of Lords, that gave me tons of inspiration because he has done things since I mean the 80s. So when he tells the stories and what they used to do before, I know that thing is really an inspiration source for me.
Hmm. And and it almost seems like it always comes to you. And have you ever had like the best ideas ever, but they always like strike at the most inconvenient time?
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. Usually at work, usually at work when I can't. But I do have a really good job. I work in a music store here in Gothenburg. So when the ideas come, it's not that big of an issue if I go to a and try out a new piano or a synthesizer for a couple of minutes because I still need to learn them and then I can, yeah, kind of. So I made a few songs using a couple of minutes. What's left over the day on work as well. So yeah,
Doing personal errands during company time.
doing person, yeah, but I wouldn't say that to my boss. No, he
Exactly.
knows I'm doing it because we need to test the instrument in order to sell them. So yeah.
Oh, is there any songs on this particular album that were cultivated in that store that maybe like is there anything that we could possibly be hearing that you cultivated there?
Masquerade because I
Really?
tried out a new synthesizer with a it was a Yamaha a Modex synthesizer, and when that came out, I tried out the acoustic guitar samples in that one. So I wrote the line that Magnus is playing on the piano at store.
Working in a music store and just having any instrument you need at your disposal is always a great thing. I can't tell you how many like demos are like left on like all of those business hard drives or something like that.
No, yeah.
Yep.
Usually in the synthesizer, since everyone nowadays have sequencers.
Definitely, definitely. Do
Mm.
you, when it comes to like singing, because it's one thing to sing in a vocal booth, but it's also another thing to sing live. Is there at all maybe a similar energy channeled into a live presence as you do when you're in a vocal booth, or do you consider playing live and singing in a studio almost two completely separate ball games?
It is two completely different things because when you're playing live, you keep in mind that the adrenaline is kicking in. So the the trick is to kind of learn to use the adrenaline as a strength for your voice and not just to sing more and louder because then you lose your dynamics. But of course, when you're in a vocal booth, no one will hear you. You can sound like a broken chicken, you know. And you don't want to do that live, and usually when you sing live, those things that you're maybe a little bit uncomfortable singing, you might not take the chance as you would in a vocal booth, as you would on stage, because then it would end up, yeah,
Is it
would be
fair?
terrifying.
Yeah. Well, is it fair to say, like, no matter how many times you practice this song and no matter how many times you rehearse it, that, like, a lot of what you've learned in practice or in rehearsal kind of goes out the window the second you take the stage?
Yeah, yeah. You need to. When we played with Seventh Crystal, we had our release gig this spring at the beer brewery here in Gothenburg. It was a festival, and I know the first band that were supposed to play there was like empty out there. It was not much people there at all, and just I don't know, let's say half an hour or 20 minutes before, the bass player just went out to look, and he comes running back and. Everyone is wearing Seventh Crystal T-shirt. Oh my God! And then the adrenaline just tick, like that. So yeah, but doing it live with the adrenaline kick, it's definitely much more fun than standing in a vocal booth or just singing because listening to your song immediately and don't have anyone producing you, it can be kind of destructive. You stand there, no, I can do it better, no, I can do it better. So the track stacks in Logic sometimes they can be massive.
Mhm. And that's funny you mentioned that too, because when you are playing live, and not to undermine it, but like you are just taking the songs that were already written and already recorded and bringing it into a live presence, and you're doing it very, very well. But is there anything remotely creative about playing live if you are just playing like either the same songs or songs that have already been written?
It must be the feedback. When you receive the feedback of something that you created, that's an inspiration. Definitely, definitely.
And do you feel that you almost have to like practice crowd interaction and stage presence as much as you have to practice the song itself, or is that just something that develops naturally as you do it more and more?
Oh, it's develops mostly natural for me. Before I played in as a singer in a cover band for many years, and I noticed a big difference when you're singing your own songs. It just becomes a different meaning of doing
100%.
that than playing covers.
Oh, 100%. Do you almost
Mm.
like, and I'd imagine too that the attachment to the song is also different. It resonates with you differently as well.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is the most difficult one. How do you know when you're finished with a song?
I ask someone else. No, usually when I finish a song, I'm I'm always doing my best and always tend to always do my best. But sometimes what I'm hearing, someone else is not reacting to it in the same way as I do, and that's a good thing because then whoever I'm sent to, whether it's Magnus or Jimmy, it's really nice to have the feedback from someone else and then to have another pair of eyes looking parallel at what you just did.
Yeah, definitely. It's always, well, it's always good for an artist to know their own path. Wisdom and guidance from others is always a great blessing.
Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for a great chat. Is there just anything with the release of "We Belong to the Stars" that you would like to promote in terms of shows? Is there a chance? Is this only going to be like a one-time collaboration, or can you see Ginevra being having its own sort of catalog and its own discography as well in the future?
I'm guessing that that we can make another record, but we have discussed it a bit, but we haven't started doing anything since we haven't released the album yet. And in terms of live shows and things like that, we talked about that as well. And if there's an opportunity and the the right amount of time is there, then we see no point in why we shouldn't do a live gig. But me, for instance, live in Gothenburg on the west coast, and Magnus Ulfstedt and Jimmy lives in Stockholm, and Magnus number two lives in south of Sweden. So we're so many miles apart, and with Jimmy out touring in heat a lot, and Magnus playing with his band, and the other Magnus is out playing drums or whatever, and me and Sim with Crystal. I think it's going to be hard, but we are open for it
Yeah,
if the time is right and everyone has. We're definitely
yeah. Compared to
open for making a live show.
compared to most supergroups, though, they always have like one member in Europe, one member in America, one member in
Yeah,
Australia, and one member in
yeah,
Antarctica at this point. So like, you guys are all close enough. I feel at least. I think out of all the
yeah,
supergroups,
yeah.
you guys are
But
all the
it's really
closest.
hard. It's really hard anyway because we're several miles away. But we'll see what happens.
Definitely, these are fantastic songs, and the world would definitely love to hear them live. I just want to thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Ginevra. Be sure to check out "We Belong to the Stars" coming out September 16th via Frontiers. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.